So welcome to this new thing, to this new idea, everybody. I'm calling it Ryan Rambles, and I probably had that idea who knows how long ago and have been putting it into practice for years now. But when it comes to the channel, I guess, YouTube channel, but also just the media enterprise of Ryan Runs, this is a new thing. This is a new show. And I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit here because I have some new ideas on the horizon that I want to talk about for kind of a Ryan Runs Phase 2. And I've been laboring over it more than I need to, for sure. I'm like, does it need to be a Patreon post? Is it going to be, one of those Ryan Runs, a video thing? Or maybe, just maybe, it just needs to be a podcast, and I think it will be, because one of those ideas is just a podcast, and I probably should call it just a podcast, but I'm going to call it Ryan Rambles. We're going to stay on brand for this thing, and it's longer form, with more mistakes. I think I hinted at maybe doing that a little bit with the video. Those are more edited maybe than they need to be, but that's also me and coming from where I come from. So with any luck, these will be less edited than that. So if you want Ryan Miller unedited, buckle up, everybody, because this isn't that post about Phase 2 coming up. This is about my history with Apple products. Unfortunately, in a way, I know there's probably no way to title this episode that's not going to come off like so first worldy that you tune out before you tune in, even, I guess, in a way. But I'll address that. I think I'll get there eventually. But this has all come about because I have ordered the iPhone 15 Pro. It'll be here, I think, on Friday if everything goes smoothly and if I can intercept that delivery and just pick it up from UPS or however it decides to come this time. But that's, as you might have guessed, not where the story begins. So in high school, I studied graphic design, and I actually got pretty lucky with the high school that I went to when it came to graphic design. One of the premier teachers, I will still say it, even we've been in touch since, because he is that involved kind of with alumni, but also with, his class is so far beyond now what it was even when I went, that there's kind of no conversation. He's more doing me a favor for letting me show up at any point to be like, hey, I'm alive in the real world of, I guess, freelance work. I've been to the program I heard in California is referred to as ROP, Regional Occupation Program, Occupation, ROP. So it's helpful to have some of the alumni come back and be like, yes, I did find an occupation with some of this regional programming that happened to me when I was in high school. But it was in its infancy when I was there. So much like myself, you could say. And he continues to be just an amazing teacher. He put the graphic arts in me, probably as much as I took it out of him. I wasn't a very good student, so I remember the amount of work he had to do just to get me assignments that were different from the rest of the class so I could complete them to pass that class. So I probably didn't learn as much as I could have, but I designed the heck out of some maps for another English class or something like that. I can't remember. But in addition to all of those graphic arts, we were working on Macs, right? And this is before the iMac, before that bubbly blue thing. We were working on some... How far back do we want to go? At one point, Mac almost went the Windows route, and they were licensing their stuff out. This is back in the dark-ish days, again, before the iMac kind of revitalized everything. So this was back when Mac was making clones or was licensing out clones. So they weren't actual Mac computers, and not all of them were. We did have some legit Mac computers, but I remember working on those clones just the same. So this is probably where my love of Mac came from. But again, with the artistic bent that I was taking, I was probably destined. That used to be the line for the longest time, and I don't know if it still holds up. I know that when it comes to operating systems, I'm still going to prefer the Mac to Windows, but I don't want this to be about that at all. But back in the day, it was always, well, Mac's got the graphics, so that's where I'm headed. But in any event, This carried on all the way through to college, where I finally did buy my first Apple computer. It was a G4 titanium laptop. And I had that thing forever. I don't even remember upgrading during college. So during those, whatever, 20 years it was, I don't know. I remember skipping the whole aluminum unibody that came out soon after that. Might have been the next step up. I don't think I ever even had one of those. Always just admired them from afar. So held on to that laptop for a good long while. And eventually it was iPhone time, right? In fact, this was towards the end of my college career. So I remember moving back to California with a normal phone, like an idiot. After the iPhone came out, I remember trying to get out of my contract with, I think, Singular at the time. I know they got bought out by AT&T. I don't know what the timeline was with this. This would have been like 2007 or something like that. So I remember trying to get out of my contract, but they were going to charge me money. So I did not follow through. But once the contract expired, I got the iPhone. I think we signed up with, I don't know who we went with then. It might have been T-Mobile or I don't know. That's, again, not the important part. Important part being that from buying that first iPhone, was one of those yearly upgrade guys. And this is where I want to say, okay, I get it from the outside looking in, especially I'm one of those guys, standing in line for the iPhones. We had plenty of looks over the years from people, or just the online discourse, as much as I also want to leave that out. I get it. I'm just saying, I get it. This is a first worldy thing. And yes, I'm obviously here because I like tech and I've had a lot of fun with it over the years. But I don't want this just to be a techno lust thing. It was an experience, waiting in line, making friends that were in line for the same reasons. So it was a great experience. I don't regret any of it, but it was this yearly thing where either we were waiting in line or we were, waking up early to get that pre-order. And this is back when, nowadays it's freaking smooth, right? When I woke up at whatever it was, 4:45 in the morning to order my iPhone 15 Pro at 5 a.m., it's like once the site goes up, you just click a few buttons and you're in. There's no waiting. There's no reloading. So this is before that time, let me tell you. But it's also back in the day when, and this is one of the best reasons that I liked doing this back in the day, is because it used to be, especially if you followed certain people very closely, it used to be that when the new iPhone came out was about the same time that people have figured out how to jailbreak the old iPhone. And Muscle Nerd was a guy, I don't know if he's still around, but he was one I remember following pretty religiously to get in on those jailbreaks. But why that was important is because you could jailbreak the phone and then literally sell it as unlocked for more than the new phones were going for. And this was also back in the day of kind of contracts. We basically re-upped with our cell providers for, I forget, 1, 2, 3 years. 3 feels like the number, but I might just be retroactively assigning that because that feels like what it is now. Nowadays, it's not a contract anymore. This is the difference I'm trying to make. Nowadays, it's like you can get on a 36-month payment plan. So not a contract per se, but you're kind of in it unless you want to pay that whole thing off at once. So this was back when it was straight up a contract. So there was still a little bit of finagling you had to do. And again, this is all third-party jailbreaks. So this is not supported in any way by Apple or the service providers. But used to be, you could get that jailbreak, you could jailbreak that old phone and then sell it for more than the new phone cost. So I was making money on the upgrade every year. Again, it wasn't so much money that I was actually, making more than I would have been making had I been going to work. But it was enough to keep me in the loop. And like I said, I was enjoying the experience for other reasons anyways. So I did that dance basically until the iPhone 7, so 2016. And by that point, a couple things were happening. I think number one, the phones were just not changing as much from phone to phone. So there was a little bit less to get excited about when it came to new features and stuff like that, which I know I said this wasn't all about the phone, but it was a little bit about the phone still. So that was enough. But also the differential, like I said, was becoming smaller and smaller because unlocking was becoming less of an issue. Carriers and Apple were beginning to support it in some small ways. As long as if they could verify that you had a new phone, and especially if you were still with them on their plan, and you still had to send out an email and do some hoops, there were still, but they would unlock the phone for you. So that became less of an issue. And I think this coincides with Apple's kind of strange turn, and some people are going to disagree and say that this is how it's always been. But they started to take this really weird turn for me towards the upper end. And maybe it was something that had been coming since, the whole prosumer revolution. I'm maybe caught somewhere in the middle, and I know this was several years back, even at this point. But when they switched to Final Cut Pro 10 or X, however you want to put that, it was such a sea change in software that it felt like they were kind of tossing me to the side when it came to that software for sure, and professional editors. And then on the other side, they were like, hey, look at this phone. Look at this Pro. I think this is about the time the Pros were going to start coming out, right? The Plus came out with the 8. Yeah, and then it was the iPhone X or 10. Again, I should really figure out which is which. But this was about the time the $1,000 phone became a thing. So I was looking at these phones that were coming out that were getting higher in price, and me feeling increasingly on the outside. What was the app called? Guilt too. I remember I have no memory of what it actually does anymore, but I remember them pushing that. That was one of maybe it was a developer spotlight or something they did during that event. And me just thinking, who is this for? Like, is this only for, it reminded me of that. Does everybody or anybody remember that app that you could buy that was literally just the picture of some sort of gem, a ruby or something, or a diamond? And the app itself cost thousands of dollars, but was just that picture. So it was completely a status-based thing. And again, people are going to say that Apple's always been about status, or is a lot about status, or you're paying for the brand in a lot of different ways. I'm not going to disagree with that. I can't fully disagree with that. I do think there's more of a conversation there, and I'm certainly not of that audience. That is not me that's buying Apple in any way to appear rich, or, again, part of the draw was that I could make money on these things by going third party in some really weird ways. But when this started happening, I stopped buying iPhones every year. So I never had the iPhone 8. I think I did end up with a 10, but it was because of some deal that's what it was. This is when I switched to Verizon. So they had some deal that was like a huge discount. So I was like, well, I might as well, this was the upper end phone at the time. So I did end up with a 10, and then nothing, no 11. My wife ended up on an opposite upgrade path. So I did buy a 10R, but it was for her and et cetera, whatever. Never had a Pro, 11 anything. I eventually got a 12 on October of 2020, it looks like, which sounds insane at this point. But that was the last time I bought an iPhone. So it's been 3 years. And again, I know this is all, you didn't buy an iPhone for 3. Oh my gosh. Why is it, start a Patreon. I'm also a white guy podcasting. So we might as well go for the trifecta. I get that. It's all known to me. But a few things caught my eye with the iPhone 15. And for the first time ever, I've kind of been paying attention to the camera on the thing. It's always been nice. I take a lot of family videos. Why shouldn't they look good? My default is 4K 24 frames. So I'm enjoying what the camera on any iPhone has to offer. But this year, especially after talking with some professional friends, I was kind of keeping a special eye out to see if the Pro was worth it, kind of to bring a third camera into my professional setup. So, and by professional, I do also mean the YouTube channel. So imagine that. But upon paying attention, it is going to shoot in 4K 60, which one of the reasons, if you go through the Daily Drum, I in some of the descriptions, I'll actually go into some camera stuff for whatever reason. Again, I play music, but also it's kind of a daily blog. So don't sleep on that part. But sometimes when I mention the video stuff, I'll talk about how, okay, now I've switched to 4K because I got the A7S III and that will shoot 4K 60 because I want to keep the video at 60 frames because the gameplay captures at 60 frames. So I want parity there. But my iPhone couldn't shoot 4K 60. So I think I might have been doing 1080p 60 for a bit. But then when I got my A7S III, I was like, hey, if I can do 4K 60, let's do it. So that's how that's been since. Well, the iPhone 15 Pro is going to do 4K 60, but it's also going to shoot in log, which I honestly did not see coming. And I tried to talk about this a while ago in the Ryan Runs episodes. If you go all the way back to Ryan Runs 16, you're going to notice each episode, just there's something going on with the color. I don't know what he's doing, but he's messing with the color. And that's because I was messing with the color. And eventually I talk about this outright in episode 21 in Ryan Runs 21. So if you want some backstory on that, go check that out. Otherwise, you can just look at each episode and see how the color is just wildly off. It's because I'm shooting in log and trying to figure out if I'm using a LUT, and even then how I'm going to balance and color correct, which I'm not good at and which I'm learning, which is why I say if you want more information on shooting in log, just go somewhere else. Don't listen to this because I'm still kind of experimenting and figuring it out. But the iPhone 15 Pro will shoot in log. In fact, it says it will also cap to, I believe, an external recording device. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work yet. I do have a Ninja. That would be awfully fun if I could hook that up, although it probably would be, again, at that point, too much of a production, because part of the reason I'm interested in the iPhone 15 Pro and that I might be able to incorporate it into some of the videos I'm making for the YouTube channel is because it would be a very easy solution to do so. So keep an eye out for that, and I'll be reporting back on how that goes. But that's basically how I got to where I got when it comes with some of this stuff. And I know the lenses, oh my gosh, and there's this and how many zooms and whatever they've done. In fact, the tech is really cool. I will say that. The way they got the different focal lengths going by the way they bounce around the signal there and the thing, it's cool anyways. But I don't know. I'm not so concerned with that because, again, I'm not going to be doing a ton of that. But who knows? If it does become as capable as they certainly push it to be, that could be something I do more often. But one of the reasons I switched to using the A7S III is because I did notice even when it came to 4K footage, there's a difference, and that's the thing you should probably know first of all, is that as good as you're going to get with the iPhone, there are levels to it. There are limits to it. So once I got, and this is probably the key, it's once I got close enough to look at some certain specific details, you can see the difference. So, and the A7, I mean, there's certainly no comparison to the A7S III, which is shooting in 10-bit 422 and all that stuff that again, sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but I just know the words. So I will shout those out when it starts happening, when I start trying to do the daily drums with the new iPhone 15, which should get here on Friday. I might even do an unboxing for it. Who knows? I might do a live stream for it. I've come to realize that might be the best venue for some of these rather than a fully edited and produced video. So, so far I've only done that with some of the comic book cards that I've collected over the years. You can go check that out. It's not a Lego live stream. Let's put it that way. I'm branching out into non-Lego based live streaming for some reason. So if you're interested in what exactly is going on with all of that, tune into the next Ryan Rambles. That's where I'm going to specifically talk about that. And that's actually going to be a precursor to a full-on Ryan Runs video post that I'm going to use to replace the video that's currently on Patreon. So it'll be a new kind of phase 2 of Patreon and where the site's going and focus I've hopefully garnered over the past year and change. So until then, I'm still on YouTube. You can find, I think, 2 videos that went up there last week, both unboxing videos and both just terribly uninformative, especially if you're interested in those products. But you get to see them and the boxes that they came in and what it looks like when you take them out of said boxes. So also patreon.com/Ryan_runs_ Facebook, Twitter, however you want to do it. And if you're feeling super saucy, go leave me a comment somewhere. Let me know what you think about this new podcast, this new direction, and maybe give me some suggestions for future topics. I don't know. What are you interested in? Because I'm interested in a way to sign off, to end this podcast in a way that's it's punchy and catchy. So if you've got one of those, especially let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep rambling on until probably the music just takes over in a way that you can't understand what I'm saying, assuming I've chosen music at this point.